Hey everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I hope you're having a beautiful day so far, and thank you so much for joining me today for another art video. A couple of days ago, I worked on this maple leaf watercolor study, and I wanted to test out a way of creating that illusion of the veins of this leaf using masking fluid. And this is something that I personally had never tried to do before. I definitely love using masking fluid, but I had never used it in this particular way. And I was curious about it because if it worked, then I would be able to arrive at that illusion of those veins throughout this leaf, which are super important, in a much faster and easier way. And I really wanted to share this with you because it kind of worked. And I know that a lot of you are interested in continuing to develop your skills with painting botanicals. And so I went ahead and filmed this process just in case it did work so that I could share it here on YouTube. Now, I don't know about you guys, but for me, one of the most difficult and trickiest parts of painting leaves is actually the veins of the leaves, especially when it's something like this leaf, in which those veins are very important to actually be able to describe that this is a maple leaf, right? Because they run all across the leaf and they go off in very specific directions in relation to the overall shape of the leaf. And we definitely want to make sure to describe them effectively, especially if we're looking for somewhat of a higher level of realism, right? So to begin, I want to share this reference photo with you, which is the one that I used for this leaf study. As I was observing this leaf before getting started with my painting process, I noticed that the veins throughout this leaf are lighter in value and yellow when compared to the oranges and reds all throughout the leaf. And this might not be the case for every single maple leaf that you see out there, because there are definitely maple leaves in all sorts of colors, but it is the case for this specific one. I also noticed that a very similar yellow can be seen throughout many different sections of this leaf, aside from the veins. So with this information in mind that I was able to gain from my reference photo, as well as my past experience with working with watercolor and masking fluid, it occurred to me that perhaps I'd be able to create a type of yellow underpainting before getting started with any other color, then move on to allow it to dry completely, and then proceed to mask out those veins. I thought that this would help me create a nice yellow glow from underneath all of the reds and the oranges, and be able to allow some of those yellow sections to shine through little areas here and there throughout the leaf as I developed those layers of oranges and reds. And of course, simultaneously, I would be able to much more easily create the illusion of yellow veins throughout the leaf, because I would have the areas for the veins completely masked out and safe for me while I painted in all those reds and oranges and brownish colors. In this way, I thought that I could save myself some time with not having to very carefully work around those veins, which are so important. And this method definitely worked. It's something I'm going to continue exploring in the future for sure. I feel it definitely saved me time, and I was able to paint in those oranges and reds around the leaf very freely in a much faster way because all of the veins were already masked out and blocked for me. Later on in the process, when I was around 3/4 of the way done with all of the reds and the oranges, I allowed everything to dry completely once again, and with everything completely bone dry, I went in to remove the masking fluid, and after the masking fluid was gone, I then proceeded to finish up with the painting process. Once I removed the masking fluid, the shapes and the lines making up the veins were very visible for me because I had already started to develop darker midtones around them. Usually when I work with watercolor, I work from lighter and more translucent colors to darker and more saturated colors. And so in the last part of the painting process, when I am going in to carve out those darkest darks, clean up some edges, and just work on final washes of color, it was very easy for me because those lines for the veins were already laid down and very well defined. In the very last phase of this painting process, you're gonna see me add in some final translucent washes of color on top of the entire leaf, jumping around just very loosely. And this helps me add a little bit of a tonal variety in those veins so that they are not 100% completely the same flat yellow all throughout. Whenever I add in those final washes of color at the end, I always make sure to allow the entire painting to dry completely. And this is because I want to make sure that I don't mess up and flatten any of the wide array of different values that I previously worked on. It took me around 5 minutes to draw in the veins with masking fluid using a toothpick. I made sure to work from the innermost, largest middle vein outwards, so that the very outer tips of those veins were thinner than the innermost sections of the veins. And this is something that I am frequently asked about in terms of masking fluid. I personally don't use those masking fluid pens, at least I haven't until now. I would recommend them though if you're just getting started with masking fluid and are trying to arrive at very thin lines, because the masking fluid that I use is a little tub of liquid, basically. And it can happen that you start losing control, or that a lot of masking fluid is falling onto your watercolor paper, things like that, and the lines created with the masking fluid aren't very thin. So it's just something to have in mind, or at least I would recommend just trying to create thin lines on a scrap piece of paper using your masking fluid with some sort of toothpick or something along those lines before actually trying to do it on your watercolor paper. And this has definitely happened to me before. If when you're placing your masking fluid, a little section is off, or a big puddle of masking fluid that you didn't want to create is on your watercolor paper or something along those lines, all you have to do is allow that masking fluid to dry completely and then pull it off. Do any fixing that you need to fix, allow it to dry once again, and then get started with your painting process. All right, so before leaving you to hopefully enjoy and get value out of the rest of this painting time lapse, I want to explain about the painting supplies that I use to create this leaf study. In terms of the paint, I use my Van Gogh half pan watercolor set, and this is their botanical set. And I use specifically 4 different colors for this piece. The yellow is transparent yellow medium. The red that I used is permanent red light. The blue that I used is ultramarine deep, and the brown that I used is Van Dyke brown. After finishing with the leaf, I painted my cast shadow with a color that I created by mixing together ultramarine deep and Van Dyke brown. In terms of my paper, I used Arches cold press 140-pound watercolor paper, and everything else that I used can be found down below in the description box of this video. I'm gonna go ahead and leave you with some nice music. I hope you enjoy the rest of this time lapse. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new here in this channel, because I release new art videos every single week, and I would absolutely love to have you here and be part of this growing art community. Alright everyone, that is going to do it for today's video. I really hope that you enjoyed it, that you learned something new, or that you found it inspiring. If you did like it, please make sure to give this video a thumbs up because it really helps support the work that I am doing here on YouTube and allows more artists to get to know about my channel. Thank you so very much for watching today. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions or comments for me, make sure to leave them down below in the comment section. I always love hearing from you guys and read every single one of your comments. Don't forget to subscribe so that I can see you next week for another video, and stay inspired. Bye guys!